Hi, my name is Brian Woolard. This is a collage of me made entirely from photos of my two children. Come travel back in time with me where I will give you the keys to the city of Toledo, Ohio. This is a 3D print I created of the skyline. This print inspired the idea to create light switches with my future students. It is a relatively small print that is extremely affordable. So, let's turn on the lights to my creative world on how I paint the town and learn about my community. This is just a fraction of the extensive list I created to pull this exhibition off. It has for now been postponed until the coronavirus epidemic subsides and we can return to a normal lifestyle. To start, I had to finish the space and make it more inviting, being that was going to be held at my own home and not an already finished space adequate and affordable enough in size. I liked the idea of not having to question on how I was or wasn't allowed to alter the space if the space was going to be that of my own anyway. You can see some of the before and after throughout this video. The video will give you a glimpse, but the being in the space gives you a better view on it all at your own pace. We are going to start the Toledo history timeline from the Black Swamp and quickly lead into occupying the land. As you can see here, this was taken and altered to give it a historical feel from the present day at Maumee Bay State Park of what the Black Swamp would have looked like. The Great Black Swamp was fed by the melting and retreating glaciers that covered northwest Ohio almost 20,000 years ago. The water was murky and sometimes chest deep with an impenetrable area of thick trees. Eventually, the area would have drainage ditches built, leaving behind extremely rich nutrient soil that would be perfect for farming. During the late 17th century, the promoted fur wars between the French and British caused the Ottawa Indians to move out of Canada and settle on the Maumee. An Iroquoian Indian group known as the Wyandot were also driven out of southern Canada by the Iroquois Five Nations and settled along the Sandusky River. These Indian groups that became native to Ohio built wigwams, longhouses, or cabins, but not teepees.
This macrame dreamcatcher was influenced by Native American culture. The Native American groups that once lived in this area included the Erie, Ottawa, Shawnee, and Wyandot. Native Americans believed dreams could influence the soul of the dreamer's confidence, kindness, and loyalty. It was inspired by an Indian hunting story following a bear to the edge of the world, falling off and creating the Big Dipper constellation. The handle is considered to be three of the hunters, and the pot shape forms the bear in the night sky. It also poses the questions that if we were to live on a different planet elsewhere in the universe, what would the Big Dipper look like, and what would the story be to those inhabiting that planet?
Battle of Fallen Timbers. The final solution. After August 20, 1794, General Mad Anthony Wayne had 9 Indian villages looted and destroyed along the Auglaize and Maumee rivers. War of 1812, disastrous attacks at sea by the British Navy on American merchant ships forced Congress to declare war against the British on June 18, 1812. In September and October, British soldiers came to the Maumee River and destroyed all of the 23 American farmhouses in the area, forcing the settlers to flee east. 3 British cannons were ferried across the river and set in place, which can be viewed there still today.
This piece of wood art represents the dense forests of the area, with the sun rising and setting, giving hope to both the Indians in the area as well as the settlers that peace will come one day.
Toledo Blade's first issue was in 1835 but has published daily since 1848 and is the oldest continuously run business in Toledo, Ohio. David Locke gained national fame for the paper during the Civil War era by writing under the pen name Petroleum v. Nasby.
You can see a paper-making depiction of the Toledo Blades Peanuts comic strip here with Snoopy and Woodstock.
Since the formation of the Maumee River about 13,000 years ago, life has sustained, and the river gave route to travel for native people. Through the ages of nomadic hunters, toolmakers, and woodland tribes, Native Americans made the fertile environment known as the Maumee River Valley their home. The word Maumee is an anglicized spelling of the Ottawa name for the Miami Indians, Maumee. Decades following the Battle of Fallen Timbers, Native American communities located near to present-day Providence Metropark saw their land become United States property, resulting in their people's removal to reservations in Kansas and eventually Oklahoma. Life was not easy for the 50,000 people who called Ohio home at the beginning of the Canal era. It was difficult to send goods, travel, and receive mail. Governor Ethan Allen Brown authorized canal construction to help ease the hardship. Miami and Erie Canal linked Toledo to Cincinnati. It had 103 locks, accommodating a change of 210 feet along the 244-mile route. Canal workers were mainly Irish and German immigrants. The tools used were shovels, wooden scoops for lifting out the earth, and wheelbarrows for hauling it away. Wages for a 12-hour day of ditch digging by hand in waist-deep mud consisted of 30 cents and a gill of whiskey. Unable to pay many workers their 30 cents a day in cash, the state resorted to a jigger ration or a shot of whiskey. Men digging the ditch drank heavily to drown their troubles and stave off diseases such as malaria and cholera, often called the Maumee fever. Folklore has it that for every mile, 4 canal workers died and were buried on site.
Soon after finishing the canal, railroads came chugging along, moving much faster than any canal boat, becoming the preferred way to travel across the country. In 1836, the Erie and Kalamazoo Railroad commenced operations pulled by horses in the territory of Michigan to run from the former Port Lawrence, Michigan, now Toledo, Ohio. The Toledo War soon gave about 1/3 of the route to the state of Ohio. The horses were replaced by a new steam locomotive, Adrian No. 1, in 1837. When looking north on the rail line from downtown Sylvania, this was part of the first railroad line west of the Allegheny Mountains. First Congregational Church is the oldest congregation organized within Toledo's original boundaries. From 1844 to 1913, the church occupied a succession of 3 meeting houses on St. Clair Street. It was destroyed by fire in 1861 and rebuilt the next year, and eventually taken down and rebuilt at the present site in 1914.
In 1862, the Cherry Street Bridge was built and later destroyed by the Yuma ship crashing into it. Robert Smith from Ohio contributed one of his highest achievements in the construction of the bridge. His turntable design for the straw bridge allowed for the 300 feet long and 420 tons to be operated by a single man pushing a lever with only 75 pounds of pressure to run it. The bridge would later be named the Martin Luther King Jr. Bridge and incorporate a pedestrian walkway.
The world's second grain elevator was built in Toledo, Ohio. Grain shipments from farms in Ohio were loaded onto ships. These ships were unloaded by the third elevator at Buffalo that transshipped their grain to canal boats, where the grain was either distributed to East Coast flour mills or loaded for transshipment to England or Germany.
With Toledo's population growing from 2,000 to 14,000 residents, the historic Church of St. Patrick was built. Only 30 years old, this growth in the city and infrastructure, Toledo was looking to make its mark in the young nation as a transportation hub for this portion of the country. It already had in place its first sewer system, fire station, Board of Education, police force, and telegraph service. This growth would continue following the Civil War.
In 1871, the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad was built between Norwalk and Huron, Ohio. It faced many difficulties at first until moving to the standard gauge. By 1944, it operated over 1,000 miles of track, hauling over 2,300 million net ton miles.
Jessup Scott was the editor of the Toledo Blade newspaper. He felt the city needed a university to train young people for responsible positions in the growing community. In 1872, the Toledo University of Arts and Trades was founded as a private school offering painting and architectural drawing as its only subjects. Scott's dream led him to endow 160 acres of land, later becoming Scott Park Campus. Without financial support from the city, it could only fund 1 teacher and 3 courses for the 26 students. The school was forced to close due to a lack of funds. It would later reopen, available to women too, with courses that included sketching and technical drawing, woodworking, metalworking, cooking, and housekeeping.
In 1873, a free public library was organized by an act of the Ohio legislature. The first day of operation was on the second floor of a commercial building on the corner of Madison Avenue and Summit Street. 64 years later, the current Toledo-Lucas County Main Library was built. This assignment has the inspiration for picking up a book to find an idea for your next art experiment. The laser etching of the books incorporates various art experiments that could be done with students that range from acting, baking, drawing, pouring paint, and making transfers.
In 1873, the Milburn Wagon Company opened in Toledo, relocating the factory to land adjacent to the railroad, and grew to the largest wagon maker on the globe with a customer base from Europe to Australia. The manufacturing process was completely mechanized, requiring 550 to 600 workers only to operate machines. Milburn was producing about 600 wagons a week in its Toledo plant, the equivalent of 1 finished wagon almost every 10 minutes. These sturdy wagons could be purchased for as little as $150. The firm had also pioneered lighter wagon wheels, hollow axles, and a braking system that allowed for easy and secure parking. Between 1915 and 1923, the company made 4,000 electric cars. The Milburn era ended when its works were purchased by General Motors for its Buick division.
ProMedica Toledo Hospital was founded in 1874. The original hospital was located at the corner of Cherry and Bancroft Street. The first open-heart surgery in Toledo was performed in 1959, and was designated as a Level 1 trauma center in 1999.
The Union Depot station in Toledo was known to be an eyesore and ended up catching fire and burning to the ground. The new train station serves up to 100,000 rail passengers each year, making it Ohio's busiest passenger rail hub. In 1996, the Port Authority spent $8.5 million renovating the facility, and it now serves as an intermodal train and bus terminal. Additionally, 5 freight railroads move freight through the region, with several rail yards loading petroleum products, automotive parts, bulk cargo, and food products. Toledo ranks as one of the top 5 rail hubs in the U.S.
Edward Libby is regarded as the father of the glass industry in Toledo, Ohio, where he opened the Libby Glass Company in 1888. His success depended heavily on the inventions of Michael Owens. Later in 1903, Libby founded the Owens Bottle Machine Company, known later as Owens, Illinois, which we will also see a photograph of in this exhibition timeline. Libby Glass had 5 glass manufacturing facilities in the United States. This would ultimately lead to Toledo becoming the Glass City.
While Toledo's glass companies produced tons of glass of their own, the control of these patents meant every piece of glass made in America by any manufacturer returned profits to Toledo. You can see these examples of glass-blowing artwork that was made at the Toledo Museum of Art by Brian Woolard. The architect Norval Bacon arrived in Toledo in 1873 with his bride, the sister of Grover Cleveland. Norval formed a partnership with Thomas Huber, with whom he created some of Toledo's most significant buildings, like this one in 1890 of the Pythian Castle. The Romanesque architecture includes wide arches and rusticated stone. The 30,000 square foot building was a meeting place for a fraternal organization and secret society known as the Knights of Pythias.
Norval's partner Thomas Huber was the architect of the Spitzer building, built in 1893. It's made of brick and terracotta with projecting bay windows, all while emphasizing symmetry. Tide Keys was a downtown grocery store created in 1894 by Charles and Ernest Tide Key. They were brothers that grew up farming on the east side of Toledo. Their primary business was delivering groceries and supplies to the freighters passing through on the Maumee River.
The growth of the downtown piloted urbanization, and the NASB building would become Toledo's first skyscraper in 1892. With plentiful jobs all over the city, the 9-story building on Madison Avenue helped house them.
The Toledo Mud Hens are a Triple-A international minor league baseball team that started in 1896 and is affiliated with the Detroit Tigers. The team relocated downtown in 2002 from Ned Skeldon Stadium in Maumee to a new $40 million stadium called Fifth Third Field in downtown, with the help from the city of Toledo and Lucas County.
In 1897, architect David Stein captured the brand of classicism with the Lucas County Courthouse, built with a 4-story symmetrical masonry building. The building had marble wainscoting with mosaic floors, ancient and Renaissance elements, doubled columns above round arches, and a crowning Roman dome raised on a peristyle.
In 1890, the First Church of Christ Scientist purchased a church property and remodeled it into a Christian Science church, occupying it until they outgrew it. They would then have this historic building built in 1898, but eventually move and hold its services in Ottawa Hills. The shift from agriculture to industrial near East Toledo can be attributed to the National Malleable Castings Company for transferring many Hungarian workers from Cleveland to Front Street in 1892. The first Hungarian Catholic parish opened up for the immigrants in Toledo would be St. Stephen's in 1898.
The Toledo City Board believed a zoo was required to make the city a tourist destination. The Toledo Zoo began in 1900 when a woodchuck was donated to Walbridge Park, and by the end of the first year, there was a collection of 39 animals. 7 years later, the first brick building for housing animals, known as the Lion House, was completed. Due to a lack of proper housing, animal escapes were frequent. By 1916, the Toledo Zoo had grown to a population of 471 animals. The architectural style used for the building's master plan was inspired by the Spanish architecture from the city's namesake, Toledo, Spain. By 1924, they had completed the first building of the project, the Elephant House. The Toledo Zoo became a public-private venture to acquire better funding, and soon the Herbivora Giraffe House, the Carnivora Building, and the Primate House were completed.
This is an oracle bone made from clay. The earliest bones were made from the skulls or shoulder blades of oxen, sheep, horses, and deer. Oracle bones like this tortoiseshell were used to foretell the future. The Toledo Museum of Art is an internationally known art museum founded in 1901 by earlier mentioned glassmaker Edward Libby. The museum moved its collection of more than 30,000 objects to its current location in 1912.
Early automobiles starting in Toledo were from the automotive division of the American Bicycle Company, moving its headquarters from New York to Toledo in 1901. They manufactured the Toledo steam carriages, steam trucks, street cleaners, and gasoline vehicles. A Toledo steam carriage could cover the distance of 60 to 70 miles per day.
Living in Toledo, inventor Alvin de Vilbus created an automatic computing pendulum scale for weighing, who he sold it to Henry Theobald. Theobald started the Toledo Computing Scale and Cash Register Company and soon realized that the weighing scale was the most essential part of the retail transaction between the merchant and the customer. He campaigned for government regulation to eliminate dishonest weighing systems of spring scale technology. Massachusetts adopted the first weights and measures laws in the United States.
Michael Owens left school at the age of 10 to start a glassware apprenticeship, where later he moved to Toledo and worked for the Toledo Glass Factory owned by Edward Libby, eventually getting promoted to supervisor. He formed the Owens Bottle Machine Company in 1903, where his machines could produce glass bottles at a rate of 240 per minute, and reduce labor costs by 80%. Owens and Libby entered into a partnership, and the company would end up merging with the Illinois Glass Company to become the Owens Illinois Glass Company.
This printmaking piece represents the physical and emotional weight a person bears going through the 7 stages of grief that are represented through coping mechanisms of drugs and alcohol. The alcohol bottle labels for the 7 stages are shock and awe, am still hurt, anger and bargaining, loneliness, now I can, new life, and hope.
The Hotel Secor photo was found in a historical records archive. Many hours were spent digitally enhancing the photo. Controlling the light source was challenging until deciding to block it using gator board and creating a negative space of the hotel from hand trimming. The light source was initially 2 battery-operated LED strips and later electrically changed to one single source plug-in with a rocker switch. It was advertised as the first fireproof hotel between New York and Chicago when it opened in 1908. It was designed by Charles Nordhoff and included 10 stories and has been remodeled several times since.
Our Lady Queen of the Most Holy Rosary Cathedral is the mother church of the Roman Catholic Diocese, established in 1911, covering 19 counties in northwestern Ohio. The church took 6 years to build, finishing in 1931. It is Spanish Plateresque style, classical and medieval, with exterior faced with Massachusetts granite and Indiana limestone. The bells were cast at Croydon, England. The front pocket doors are European cypress with stained glass. The stained glass windows were crafted by the Angelo Patassi Studio of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
John Willis moved his automobile factory to Toledo in 1909. Willis manufactured more than 350,000 Jeeps, helping fuel Toledo of becoming a global automotive manufacturing and parts production center. The smokestack spelling out Overland in bricks is now a landmark, dedicated in August 2013 with a plaque honoring the former plant's workers.
Waite High School is part of the Toledo Public Schools and opened 1914. Waite was a national high school football powerhouse in the 1920s, traveling by train as far as California, Oregon, and Maine. Going undefeated, they have been crowned national high school champions in 1924 and 1932. Waite has named their football stadium after their successful coach, Jack Mollenkopf, who also coached football at Purdue.
Libby Owens Sheet Glass Company produced flat glass for building and automotive products with a float glass plant in Rossford, Ohio. The company merged with the Edward Ford Plate Glass Company to create LOF, eventually being bought by Pilkington Group.
In 1917, LaSalle moved to a 9-story building located next to the Spitzer Building. 10 years later, new floors were added. The interior incorporated high ceilings and detailing said to be inspired by the cathedral in Toledo, Spain.
The first bishop of Toledo invited the Sisters of Mercy to open hospitals in Toledo. The sisters understood the importance and the need for nurses and hospital care. Their first class of 10 student nurses started the same year that Mercy Hospital opened in 1918, just as the Spanish influenza struck the Toledo community.
The Hillcrest Hotel was built in 1929. Artists, authors, and businessmen stayed in the hotel, including the first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, Amelia Earhart. She had an arrow painted on the roof to assist pilots in locating the local airfield. 4 years later, during an attempt to make a circumnavigational flight of the globe in 1937, she would disappear over the Pacific Ocean near Howland Island.
The Ohio Bank building was built in 1930 by the Ohio Savings Bank and Trust and was the tallest in Toledo at the time at 368 feet high. 5 years later, the Owens, Illinois Glass Company moved its headquarters into the building. The building would remain OI's headquarters until its move to 1 Seagate in 1982, which we will see later.
Commonly called the High-Level Bridge, the Anthony Wayne Bridge was constructed in 1931, and is a downtown Toledo landmark named after General Anthony Wayne. It is a suspension bridge that spans the Maumee River and recently incorporates some new lighting upgrades that give it a unique aesthetic appearance. The light-emitting diodes can run through a dozen lighting programs with varying colors that reflect beautifully off the water.
Tony Paco was the son of Hungarian immigrants and was a native East Toledoan. He opened his sandwich and ice cream shop in 1932. When actor Burt Reynolds visited Toledo in 1972, he stopped at the restaurant per his daughter's suggestion. Reynolds was the first celebrity to eat at Paco's, and he inscribed his signature on a hot dog bun, starting the tradition of bun signing.
The nation's second oldest refinery, Sun Oil, began in Toledo in 1894, and ran its first pipeline in 1895, but didn't begin marketing gasoline until 1920, and first publicly traded in 1925.
Owens Corning Fiberglass Company was formed in 1935. The U.S. Navy used Owens Corning insulation, calling it Navy Board. Owens Corning produced the first fiberglass car body used in the Chevrolet Corvette. Creating its first all-fiber fiberglass wool and dyeing it pink, the company became the first company to trademark a color. NASA worked with Owens Corning after the Apollo 1 fire to develop a fireproof cloth coated with Teflon for the outer layer of the spacesuit.
The Islamic Center of Greater Toledo was built in 1953 by the Syrian-Lebanese immigrants. It was the first mosque built from the ground up in the state of Ohio. We're Greater Toledo Educational Television, or WGTE-TV PBS, began broadcasting in 1953 on the University of Toledo campus with an antenna in the bell tower. Serving Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan, WGTE maintains studios on South Detroit Avenue in Toledo, broadcasting from a transmitter in Oregon, Ohio.
The Highland Building was a 15-story corporate headquarters that brought together LOF offices that were scattered in several locations in 1960. It showcased a variety of LOF products, such as thermopane insulating glass, Vitrolux, and parallelo gray plate glass.
The Anderson's Grain Facility, built in 1953, was the first deep-water grain loading facility on the U.S. side of the Great Lakes. Toledo Botanical Garden originally consisted of 20 acres donated in 1964 by George Crosby to the city of Toledo, and now encompasses more than 50 acres and includes notable events like the Crosby Festival of the Arts.
The Masonic Auditorium is a concert hall built in 1969 and now called the Stranahan Theater. The theater has approximately 170 theater events a year, including the Phantom of the Opera, Chicago, The Lion King, and Wicked. It is also the site of the Toledo Symphony Orchestra, the Nutcracker, and A Christmas Carol.
Owens Corning Fiberglass Company occupied the Owens Corning Fiberglass Tower for 37 years until moving elsewhere in downtown. The skyscraper, constructed in 1969 at 400 feet, was renamed Tower on the Maumee. The top floors were transferred into luxury apartments, and the lower levels were renovated for commercial office space.
Franklin Park Mall opened in 1971, occupying the former site of the Franklin Airport. The mall featured sunken courts before the entrance to each department store, skylights, and a mobile constructed by American sculptor Alexander Calder in front of the Hudson's entrance. Notable stores now include Dillard's, Macy, Marshall Field's, and Apple.
The phones here were created by 3D printing, wood, and laser etching, and aluminum pouring into a hollow mold of green sand. The focal point of the artwork was about security, identity, and vulnerability. If you look closely you can see the artwork placed on the shelves at the Apple Store.
Built in 1982, the Michael DeSalle Government Center is the fourth tallest building in Toledo and named after the elected governor of Ohio in 1958. Designed by architect Minoru Yamasaki, who is best known for designing the original World Trade Center in New York City.
Also built in 1982 and acquiring many names from OI Building to Fifth Third Center and One Seagate, it is the tallest building in Toledo at 411 feet and 33 stories and costing $100 million. One Seagate was built as the centerpiece of the Seagate project in downtown Toledo. The building once served as the world headquarters for Owens, Illinois. The exterior of the building is covered in 293,000 square feet of glass, with 4,400 vision panels, representing Toledo's history as the Glass City, and OI's presence in the glass industry. Seagate Convention Center is a performing arts and convention center, opened in 1987 with over 17,000 square feet of meeting space. The inspiration behind the three photos is for students to alter real life into a comic book theme that one may see in something like Spider-Man. The second project was taking an actual image and changing it into a three-dimensional form with the use of paper layering.
Toledo features the world's first bridge pylon to include glass panels. These panels contain thousands of LED lights to show off the bridge's signature status. The Veterans Glass City Skyway Bridge consists of a unique cable arrangement where the cables do not attach to the central tower, but loop through the tower and only attach at the bridge deck. The bridge was completed in 2007, and the exhibiting artist Brian Woolard worked on the traffic flow management for the construction of this bridge in his teenage years.
The Huntington Center is an 8,000-seat arena completed in 2009 and costing $105 million to build. It is the first new leadership in energy and environmental design sports arena in the United States. The arena naturally shades the glass main entrance and uses light-colored roof membrane to reflect heat and sunlight, and has a rainwater collection system to reuse for landscaping purposes around the arena. The Huntington Center replaced the Toledo Sports Arena and serves as the home of the Toledo Walleye hockey team.
Casinos were prohibited in Ohio before 2009, so gamblers in Toledo would typically drive to casinos in Detroit, Michigan or Windsor, Canada. In 2009, Ohio voters approved to allow for 4 casinos to be established in the state, one of which was Toledo. The 4 casinos were expected to generate $600 million in revenue collecting fees to be redistributed to local school districts. Hollywood Casino was completed 3 years later in 2012.
Lastly, we come back full circle with the formation of the Great Lakes over 14,000 years ago from the glaciers and eventually giving us our Black Swamp region. The National Museum of the Great Lakes, finished in 2014, provides a glimpse of the significant contributions offered that include our freshwater fishing, migration, transportation, and serving as a primary means of survival.
I really hope you guys got a moment to just enjoy this informative exhibition. The artworks, the hard work that was poured into everything, the transformation process. If you could remember, there was nothing but brick walls, no walls over here, no ceiling, the lighting, all of it's been redone just to pull this space together and to give you guys just this vision of what Toledo is all about in my eyes. And I also want to hopefully hold future exhibitions here. But the goal of this as my master's project to just show you what I want to be able to do with my future students and I think I can give them a whole different light of creativity that I just transformed along the way, all the jobs I've had, the experience. It's just a big cumulative process, and I think we can really pull this together. I hope you enjoyed the whole experience. And again, this was Toledo in my eyes. I would like to see what my students can offer. We all have a story to tell. So this is my story about Toledo. What is your story?